3. Good evening. I'm Carol Gader from Florida, and this is,
Hi, I'm Jackie Olmsted from Phoenix, Arizona area.
and we connected on Alignable, which is a social media platform. And I was reading Jackie's profile, and I just felt so much emotion because the things that Jackie had been through were similar to my own, all of them, and I just couldn't believe it. So we decided to get together and do a Zoom. And the purpose of the Zoom is to help you with some of these issues. So tonight we are going to be talking just about gut issues with celiac and gluten intolerance. So I'm going to start by interviewing you, Jackie, and ask you some questions about your journey. How long have you had gut issues?
Wow, well, I actually was first diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome when I was in high school. So it's been quite a long time. So since the 80s, that was when I was first diagnosed with having issues. But I didn't really discover till much later what was the even bigger culprit.
Well, what symptoms did you have that made you think something was going on?
Let's see. Well, back in high school, I think that I had a lot of just irritation. I had a lot of, I think I had bloating for strange, unknown reasons. And it's been a while. So I'm trying to remember exactly at those times. But I would get indigestion, and I remember talking to my mom about it and saying, and my dad, and saying, hey, I have this going on and I'm not sure what it is. So they took me to a physician there at that time. So let's see, that was the biggest thing, indigestion and bloating.
So were doctors and medical professionals, did they finally help you?
Well, not until 2015. It took a long time.
Oh, wow, that is a very long time.
Hmm.
And so you suffered all that time with issues and wasn't sure what it was. Well, and you got diagnosed in 2015 by a doctor or what?
Yes. I first, well, a friend of mine was noticing that I was eating big, huge containers of ice, soft ice that you can crunch. And I was eating them one container after another. I just kept eating them. And she is a nurse assistant. And she said, Jackie, I think you need to check to see if you're anemic. Well, by the way, I've been diagnosed with borderline anemia my whole life. So it was interesting so I had somebody in the beginning, actually it was the end of 2014. She said, I think you need to go check this out. So it first started with just my general practitioner saying, well, let's do your blood work. And lo and behold, my iron levels were really, really low. Excuse me. And you wouldn't think, oh, you wouldn't immediately think that's gut issues. I mean, I didn't, certainly, and neither did the doctor. And because of certain situations with that particular doctor, I decided to go to another doctor and get more extensive information about the situation. And I ended up getting referred to a hematologist because if this is what's going on in my blood work, and I'll never forget, I walked in and she said, I can't even believe you're walking around, Jackie, with these levels of iron. How are you? And I said, I'm extremely fatigued. I'm so tired all the time. And she said, you know what? I'm going to send you over to the gastro and enterologist. And I thought, okay, next journey. And he actually did blood work, I didn't know, for celiac disease. And he called me the next day. So it took like 3 or 4 doctors to just simply get me to the point of recognizing that it was actually stemming from a gut issue.
Wow, that's a long time. And once you found out, did you get support from your doctors or your family? What kind of support did you have, or did you have none?
I, excuse me. Well, the doctor called that day and he said, Jackie, you need to stop eating gluten entirely from now until your whole life, just your whole. And I said, what? Gluten?
It's
How
not
do I
a
do,
thing.
how do you do that? And he just said, good luck. And I first of all, I was really happy, to be honest, because I finally discovered a reason for what's going on. But second of all, I was, of course, freaked out. Like, how do I find out where gluten is, where it is, and how do you go about that? Excuse me. So he was supportive, but he was not knowledgeable about how to go about it.
Hmm.
And my boyfriend at the time, not anymore, he was not supportive at all. He just couldn't, it just, the long story, but that didn't work out. But I ended up needing to go get a scoping of my stomach and intestines, like all of them, all of it. So, but I do remember, so I did go back to the gastro doctor again, and he suggested that I try the FODMAP diet, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, which is a low gas creating type of food list. And I just looked at him, I was like, that doesn't really help, actually, at all. And who else? Oh, to be honest, the great support that I did get was online. I found communities of people who were, and of course, the typical thing. I went to, celiac.org, celiac.com, gluten-free living on like all these different websites and all these Facebook communities, that kind of thing. And I found a lot of non-help and a lot of good help. So it's a mixture, obviously, online. Yes. So
That's great. So that's what you had to do. Hmm.
mhm.
Well, I bet you now, quite a few years later, you know how to eat. And so, what do you do to eat differently now?
Well, I did a lot of research, the 2015 and 2016 about where gluten lives. And I decided that certainly, I just made a decision. Okay, I'm only going to eat foods that are either have that beautiful logo on it that said certified gluten free, or fruits and vegetables. Things that are inherently non-glutinous,
Right,
so to speak.
right.
So that's where I started. Also, the first book I excuse me that I ever read was called Yum Universe. And that was an excellent book resource for me on how literally to change my whole kitchen. I mean, I'm sure, when we get to your story, I'm sure you had a similar situation where everything had to be separated. The toaster, I ended up cleaning really well. A lot of people will just buy a brand new toaster. That's totally fine. You can do that too. But that's where I started is how do I relearn how to eat and cook?
I know it's hard. It's not easy. It gets easier, I think, as you go. But when you first start, it's just like you don't know anybody else to talk to, and you just don't know where to start. And then when you
Mhm.
start reading labels, you see gluten is in almost everything. You know, well, what do you recommend the people do first when you think of celiacs or intolerance? What do you recommend they do first, actually?
Well, the biggest thing I recommend certainly is doing a whole inventory of your kitchen and the things that are in your kitchen, going through your cupboards. Also, another huge thing to think about, which I'm sure some people will have protest about. Well, what about the rest of my family?
True. What
Because
about the rest?
what if they don't want to eat gluten free? Well, if this is causing you such, you know, massive life problems, if they can listen to you and hear what's going on with you, they, in an ideal world, they will listen and support you and say, okay,
That's
well,
right.
so in my household, everybody's gluten free, except for certain situations where I will still make regular toast for my daughter because she enjoys that. And there's just certain types of breads that definitely do better that have gluten, but I just keep everything really separate. So that's the thing, is separating everything in your kitchen.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. I think that's a big help to people who are going through this. And just to know that you're not alone. I mean, when I met you, I'm thinking, ah, there's other people out there.
Definitely. I'm so glad you reached out. It's such a blessing, and I appreciate having met you. And you've got great energy, and you're so excited about helping people. And so I'm so glad you did reach out, because it's not very common that I have celiacs reach out to me. So it's
It's
great.
true. But it wasn't just the celiac, it was all the things that you went through that I went through. And it's been a lifetime for me of healing. And this was one of the last things I did. Are there any
Well,
questions you have for me that might help people out there?
yeah, that's actually a perfect segue into, well, how long have you had these issues? And same for me, when you asked me,
Yeah.
when did it start for you?
Well, I think that when I thought, was I listened to you talk, yes, back in junior high and high school, I remember being totally constipated all the time. And finally, when I was 16, I had bad breath. And at 16, that is not the thing you want. And so I remember asking my mother, please, 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 I want to go to the doctor and find out something must be wrong with me because I was never like that before. And so she took me to the doctor. And I remember the first thing the doctor asked me, well, I told her I was constipated and I thought maybe it had something to do with that. She says, well, how often do you go to the bathroom? Are you ready for the answer?
Yes, tell us.
I told her once or twice, probably twice a week.
Wow.
And she says, oh, well, I guess some people just don't go that often. Now, I know it's once or twice a day, and it happens for me every day, except occasionally. It will just be once. But to eat and eliminate is what we're supposed to do. And so if I had just known more then, but I was only 16, I had no idea. And so that I think that's the start of all of it, that somehow, and I wasn't eating a lot of gluten. We never had bread at a meal. But of course, breakfast was always the toast or the cereal. And my father would make wheat cereal or rice. Now, probably I felt better on the days he made rice. But when he made the wheatina, that is terrible for celiacs. And some people think, well, I'll go to wheat bread instead of white bread when we realize how much better the wheat bread is. Well, the wheat bread is worse for celiacs because it's got more gluten in it. And so it's worse for celiacs. Hey, oh, well, talk about symptoms. It was later on in life when I had gotten rid of some of my other issues. I was finding that I didn't want to eat because when I ate, I felt terrible. And when I finally would eat, I would overeat because I had gone so long from not eating that I'd overeat. And so I had weight problems too, on top of everything else. And some of the symptoms I had were bloating, very gassy, feeling like I just want to go to bed after I ate because I felt so lousy. So I wouldn't eat until about 2 o'clock because I wanted to get my work done in the morning, especially when I had children and all. I wanted to get everything done because I knew once I had lunch, I was done. I was done for the day because the
Wow.
rest of the day I felt so lousy. I didn't want to do anything and I was exhausted like you. And yes, like you, I had anemia after my first child.
Mm.
So I never thought of that. And you were just saying you were anemic. And yes, after I had my first child, it took me years and years to get that back, and I finally got it back. But yeah, all those symptoms, you know.
And so it doesn't sound like that first doctor certainly was just absolutely no help to you. Who did
I didn't
help?
know enough to go to a doctor on this. I mean, I didn't.
Sure.
I just thought that I had a lot of gas and constipation. I never knew that that was anything, that was just me. I guess the first sign of something really wrong was when a friend came and she did kinesiology and dowsing, and I had just learned dowsing and kinesiology, but I never thought to use it for this. So she tested me and she says, "Oh my goodness, Carol, you know that you're allergic to a lot of foods?" I said, "Really?" I said, "What?" She says, "Gluten and corn and shellfish and milk and eggs." She says they all, when she was testing my arm strength, or some people do it, she did it both ways with a pendulum. It showed that those 5 things I had a problem with. So what I did then was book an appointment with my doctor and tell her I really feel I need to go to an allergist. And so she sent me to a clinic, which was about an hour away, and they did all the allergy testing, which helps. And all of them showed up that I had a problem, plus a host more of environmental things. But we're talking just about the gut right now. And so I played around with, I went off all the other things, all 5, off and on. It's so hard to stay off 5 things, but I saw I was off and on. And I guess what changed me was I went to a conference by a doctor who specialized in celiac. And after the lecture, I went down and I talked to her and I said, I don't know for sure if I'm a celiac. And she said, "Well, did you ever get tested?" I said, "I got tested to show that I had a problem on my skin. But then I went and had my blood tested and it didn't show." She said, "Oh, it didn't show, huh? Well, let me ask you this question. Were you or were you not eating gluten at the time of the test?" I said, "I was not. I had been off it for about a year." And she says, "Then it won't show up. The test will not show you have a problem with gluten unless you eat it every day for 3 months prior." I said, "Why, that would blow me away."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Carol, you know you have a problem, just stay off it." So I stayed off it. And then after about a couple years, I found I could eat corn, I could eat the eggs, I could eat ice cream again and milk, and I could eat shellfish. It was only the gluten. I had healed my colon to the point where I could tolerate the other things. Isn't that alone a miracle?
That's fantastic. And I'm really glad you brought up the needing to be on gluten to be tested for celiac. That's because that's really key. A lot of people don't know that for sure.
It's a
And
real
I
key.
and I had not even a clue at the time. So I guess I was kind of lucky that I was eating a lot of gluten anyway. But um yeah, so let's see. And so what about your family? Were they supportive?
My husband's very supportive. By the time I finally found all this up, my kids were pretty well grown up, and my parents were getting older and needing help. So they were kind of out of the picture that way. But my husband was very supportive, and we bought a toaster that had 4 sections to it. And so I put his bread in here and I put mine over here. Each one had enough for 2. And then when I made sandwiches, I'd make them on a cutting board. And then I would just turn the cutting board over when I did mine, because I like to make his first. And then I would take the knife, either get another knife or wipe it off. And then later I found that I could eat a tiny bit now and then if I got it by accident. Like if I wanted to eat something like a piece of pie, I like eat the inside, but sometimes you get a tiny little bit. So I've come to the conclusion that I really am not a celiac. I am one of these people who has an intolerance for that. And I just want to give you a statistic that I think is really important. And I got this from that celiac specialist at the conference, that 1 in 3 people has problems with gluten. I mean, 1 in 3. Now think of that when you sit in a group of 100 people. 1 in 3.
Certainly.
30 people there have a problem with their gut, and it's gluten related and they don't know it. And 1 in 10, and this is just the United States, 1 in 10 are celiacs. And most of the celiacs have blood that comes by ancestors from the Celtic nations or the Scandinavian nations. So I know I had one relative way back when that was from Sweden. So that's interesting statistics, and I am glad
Yeah.
that I
When I was diagnosed, it was only 1 in 100. So that's interesting that.
Well, that's what she said, and that was more recent. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sure that it will increase until and so before I interject something else that's also really important to this, totally linked to this issue, is what do you do now differently? How do you eat differently now?
Well, I love fruits and vegetables, thank heavens, unlike some people. And I really eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. However, breakfast can be a problem for a lot. You might get sick of just having eggs for breakfast. But you can get gluten-free bread. Nowadays, it's much easier. When I first started, it was horrible. They didn't have gluten-free sections in the supermarket. And I've been taking this for 40 years, a protein powder that is gluten-free. And I just have that for breakfast. And when I go out sometimes on the weekend, I just don't eat the gluten, of course. I have the eggs, or I'll have an omelet or something. And that's fine, but I don't feel as good. I feel more full and heavy. This is light, and I have it every morning, and I do have coffee. So yeah, that's one of my vices when you're trying to eat well, but I love coffee. So, and you can buy crackers. I have some gluten-free, and you can look for this big letters. You can't miss it, gluten-free. And there are all kinds of things on the market that gluten-free, and it says right on it, gluten-free. And then there are many kinds of soups. Amy's has wonderful soup. This one I had just tried. It's a new Pacific. I don't know if they're new to gluten-free, but tomato biscuit. It's delicious. And I do love soups. So sometimes for lunch, I'll just have this and maybe a couple of gluten-free crackers or gluten-free slice of toast. I have changed my diet. Yes, no gluten. I'm not going to do that, even if I peel my colon, and it's okay. I suppose that could happen, but you can live a life of feeling great and on top of the world. You really, really can. But you've got to do what it takes and get support. And we're here. We want to bring this to you so that it can help you.
Certainly. And then last question. What do you recommend that people do if they are thinking that they have some of these issues, these either celiac or just an intolerance.
I think it's really important that I would say go to an allergist because they can tell you exactly what it is. If you think that you have a whole lot of foods that you might be kind of keeping track of that bother you, then test for them. And there are certain things that more people are allergic to than others. So the doctor knows two other things that he might test you. A big problem today is people with peanut allergies. That is, I think, almost as big as gluten now. And I have a friend that has to carry an EpiPen with her because of that. And so I'm sure you don't have to carry an EpiPen, but it sure messes with your system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would suggest you go to an allergist and find out. That might be better than trying to get the test because you have to be gluten free. If you've been eating gluten free, sure, go have the test. But if
Yeah.
you haven't and you suspected it, go and be tested. Then you know for sure. Because sometimes not knowing is worse than knowing.
No, that's great. That's definitely great places to start for sure. And in my experience, though, even allergists, I mean, you have to look at each specialist is specialized in that one field. And so I recommend hiring multiple types of specialties if you can, or at least have them. If you have, for example, if you have a general practitioner, they can actually order tests for all different things. And then you only have to go to the one and explain to that person, you would like to have them be your central gatherer of possibilities. And that really will help a lot.
Yes, I agree. It's
And
good to find out and get help.
yeah, that's fantastic. And the biggest thing too, I also want to mention though, in all my studies and everything, is that glyphosate is a absolute, it's actually worse than all of the things. And glyphosate is in anything that is not organic. Anything with pesticides will have glyphosate in it. And so I know you probably know also as well. And so there are a lot of foods that could be masked by the fact that you're still having glyphosate. And to me, to be honest, only in the last year have I really focused more on reducing the glyphosate in my food. And so I notice a difference. Um,
All right, let me ask you this.
yeah,
How would you know if that's in your food?
glyphosate,
Yes.
just certainly by studying, just reading about it and knowing that it's in anything that has pesticides. So anything that's not organic is gonna have glyphosate.
Thank you. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for because I
And
don't think
yeah.
you'll read the label and see
Oh,
that.
no, 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 no.
So
Right.
that's, yeah.
That's yeah, perfect, perfect. It is something that they just do. And so, what was I gonna say? So the other thing is, yes, pay attention to like the dirty dozen, stay away from those. They talk about, or the dirty 15, and stay, for example, strawberries are a really big one that
Right.
really absorbs the pesticides and glyphosate altogether. So there are certain foods that are okay to have non-organic because of the skins, not like melons, they don't absorb as much because because personally, I mean, I'm sure you have this situation where we can't always find organic X, Y, or Z because it's just not available right now. Like right now in Arizona, I haven't seen any organic grapes for quite a while, but once they're back here, I will I will definitely be buying the organic grapes again. But until then, I don't buy grapes at all. And GMOs, by the way, too. But I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff, but it is all related to our gut. And I think that if you're open to and I'm talking to anyone out there, if you're open to learning about it, even if you feel like you're seasoned, I keep learning stuff every day. I'm sure you do too.
Yes, yes. And Jackie, right now, I would like to ask you, and I'm going to do the same. I would like to have you give them your website. Now, we plan to publish this on the social media for all of you to have. And so you can just tell it, and then we will also write it when we post it in the bottom in the
Okay.
chat. So just tell them what it is, and I'll tell them what mine is.
Oops. I'm putting it
For
in my.
instance, we both
Yeah.
have the Dirty Dozen list. So if you wanted the Dirty Dozen that you really need to get by organic, you could contact either one of us and we could make sure you get that. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I changed my my little profile name. So earthmamaliving.com is my website, and you can reach out to me via that website. So certainly in any of the social media platforms, you can find me and send me a direct message. Happy to reply. And how about you, Carol?
Well, I have several websites, and I'm just going to tell you one is it's easy to remember. It's just Dowsing Webinars. And I do have a brand new class on allergies and dowsing your allergies with a pendulum. And I have charts with lists of all the allergies. And so you can go in there. There's some free classes and free talks that you can get, and those classes are for sale. My other one, because I am a wellness counselor and we both do energy work, and you healed yourself with energy work, and I healed myself pretty much by staying off it and taking supplements because I was so depleted. My other website is Gader Family Wellness. So again, that's easy. Okay, we're going to wrap this up, and we're just going to tell you that see us again about 2 weeks. We're going to do this again, and we will be putting these on the social media, Facebook and LinkedIn and Alignable, and maybe, I don't know, but the Venmo, if you're on that. I'm not, but I'm thinking of getting on there, and YouTube. So you'll be able to get that there. So I'm going to say good night, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, maybe the same time. And we will be talking about next time chronic fatigue and depression. So yes, you want to be here if you have dealt with any one of those, which I think maybe we'll throw in fibromyalgia because that causes chronic fatigue too. And I had all of those.
My goodness.
And you did. You had most of them too. So anything you want to add, Jackie?
No, it's great. I hope you all gathered some nuggets from us today. And thank you, Carol. I appreciate you so much. It was really fun. Thank you.
I appreciate you too, Jackie. This was fun, and we hope out there it helps a lot of you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.